Welcome, welcome. Welcome, everybody. Thank you very much for being so numerous. So many of you in this beautiful room here in Montpellier. Welcome to Montpellier. Welcome to the Quorum. Yes, we are launching this BioMon Week here in Montpellier. Welcome. Give yourself a round of applause for the trip that you made, for your work on the subject, and for the great week you're going to have today. Give yourself a round of applause. Thank you for being here. It is very nice. It is great to see so many of you. For those of you that were here last night, we had a great talk on kind of the history and interdisciplinary approach to science, monitoring, policy related to biodiversity, not relationship also, or relation with biodiversity as humans. And we're going to continue today, tomorrow, after tomorrow, with great workshops, plenary sessions, a couple of visits. It is nice out today, even though we are in a room. Yesterday was a little bit stormy weather. And you are all very motivated to be here from all over Europe and even outside. It is great to see so many people, stakeholders represented, scientists, policymakers, project managers, startups, nonprofits, organizations that are non-governmental. I am very, very pleased to moderate these events. My name is Henry Landis, and I moderate events on sustainability. I teach at the Institute of Political Science in Paris on biodiversity, food, and agriculture specifically. Very happy to be with you today. We are going to invite onto the stage in a couple of instances, representative of the French Biodiversity Agency, Mathieu Basille, also with Biodiversa Plus. He's going to invite then our great co-organizers of this week. They're going to come speak about why we're doing this event, their work, and we're going to thank them very cordially because it is thanks to them that this event is taking place. We will then have a great roundtable keynote presentations on bridging the gap between research and policy with regards to biodiversity monitoring. So a great morning that is in store for all of you. Thank you for your participation. Be as active as you would like. We always take questions from the room in these panels. Thank you very much for welcoming very warmly Mathieu Basille of the French Biodiversity Agency. Thank you very much. He's going to give us... The floor is yours, Mathieu.
Good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure to see you all here today. Welcome to sunshiny Montpellier. Our sincere apologies from the tourism office for yesterday's weather. They didn't get our request on time, unfortunately. So let's forget about this false start and introduce you. Welcome to the BioMonWeek2026. I could have started with a long story about how it came to life. Guillaume, Pettorelli, and myself in Montreal 3 years ago at the GeoBond conference, around a few beers maybe, talking about how great it would be to have such a conference in Europe. And now we have it. But I'm going to keep it short. Talk to us if you want to know the details. Instead of that, here's long story short. That's the story of our logo. And I think it represents very well what we're doing here. So our logo represents the network mapping who we are. The leaf is for biodiversity. Let's not forget about that in the first place. The circle is about the alliance, the union that we're all in. So the BioMon Week is this. That's community in all its diversity. That's what makes it unique. In particular, geographically, this is the European Conference for Biodiversity Monitoring. This is the first European conference dedicated to biodiversity monitoring. In fact, this is the first regional conference dedicated to biodiversity monitoring. So we're pretty happy to start here in Montpellier. But as you can see, it's not a select club. It's not European only. We have participants from all over the world, from all 5 continents. We're also building a new kind of Europe, as you can see. 31 European countries. Forget about the EU, we're doing better. And we're still growing, if I'm not mistaken. There's a little bit of bias, as you can see geographically, but we're doing our best, and it's going to grow also in the future. here is something that we use to build this conference. That's the supply and demand framework. That explains what we're doing and why. This is not biodiversity monitoring for the sake of it. This is biodiversity monitoring to be used. So we supply biodiversity monitoring data and results for people, assessors, communicators, managers, researchers, investors, and business stakeholders. And let's not forget policymakers. They are at the end of the chain. You should feel represented somehow in this graphic. If not, let us know so we update the graphic. Long story short, what makes this conference unique is the diversity of participants. I don't think we've ever seen that before. If we break it down a bit, we don't even have half of the people that are researchers. I thank and welcome all the researchers, but we expected that they would respond and wanted to be part of this conference. But we also have a bunch of people who are not researchers. Monitoring professionals, students. We're very happy to have students because they're the next generation professionals, right? People from the private sector, policymakers, us, organizers, and other people. That means also maybe we will need to update the graphic, the scheme I presented before. By realm, we're also very happy to have this conference across realms. That's not very typical. Basically a third from terrestrial, a third from transversal, and another third broken down in between marine, freshwater, and let's not forget about interfaces between realms. So very happy about this diversity as well. By gender and experience, I'm very proud to have something that's almost balanced. We have almost as many women and men, and a little bit more older people than younger people, but we're not too bad. So welcome the younger generation, and let's do even better next time. But I think we're pretty good for a start. By area of expertise, you've noticed that we have 5 co-organizers. They're going to all come in a couple minutes to introduce themselves, but they all come with their own expertise, and they're part of this organization for a reason. Biodiversa Plus, Silence for Nature, BioAgora, MARCO-BOLO, and GBIF. We also have 9 themes. You've seen that in the program. You've been asked if you were contributing to choose one of these themes. Not going to go in details, but these are what structures the conference. We also have 164 European projects that are represented today and during the week. That's a whole lot of projects. You have the whole list in the book of abstract at the welcome booth. I'll come back to that in a minute. By emails, I got almost 6,000 emails just to organize this conference. That's about 12 emails per day, so I guess that's fine, right? Okay. Thank you very much. You probably got one of those, and if I did not answer your email, now you understand why. Let's switch right away and welcome now Grégoire Delforge. Is Vice President at Montpellier Métropole for ecological transition. So he's our host. Welcome, Grégoire.
Thank you very much. I negotiated with Mathieu. He told me 5 minutes. I told him I would do 9, so it's my job to keep you on edge. Madam, Sir, representatives of the European institutions, Deputy Director General of the French Biodiversity Agency, scientists, representatives of local authorities, NGOs and businesses, ladies and gentlemen from all across Europe. I'm very pleased to welcome you to Montpellier this morning on behalf of Michael Delafosse, Mayor of Montpellier and President of Montpellier Méditerranée Métropole. It's both a pleasure and a responsibility to open this first edition of a European event dedicated to biodiversity monitoring. Your presence in Montpellier is no coincidence. It says something about our territory, about its scientific history, its ecological commitments, but also about the seriousness of the times we're living in. Biodiversity is not a sectoral topic. It does not only concern remarkable species and natural habitats. To speak about biodiversity today means speaking about the very conditions that make our territories habitable. It means speaking about health, water, food, land use planning, social justice, and climate resilience. It means speaking about the way our societies organize their relationship with the living world. Montpellier is located at the heart of the Mediterranean basin, one of the world's major biodiversity hotspots. Here, within a relatively compact territory, we find garrigue landscapes, agricultural plains, rivers, wetlands, magnificent lagoons, dense urban areas, and fragile ecological corridors. Our territory is home to a considerable proportion of the species known in mainland France. This diversity is an immense asset. It's also a great responsibility, as this living heritage is now under strong pressure. Our metropolitan area is attractive with the highest demographic growth in France. It must respond to needs for housing, mobility, economic activity, and public facilities. This is the full complexity of local public action. We must organize our ecological transition without setting its different challenges against one another, but without disregarding any of them either. Preserving biodiversity does not simply mean adding an environmental layer to public policies. It means transforming the way we plan and integrate our development. This is why in Montpellier, we have launched a biodiversity strategy that aims to be connected to all our major public policies: urban planning, climate, air, energy, water and aquatic environments, mobility, and more. And this strategy is based on 4 principles that are simple but demanding. First, improving knowledge. We can only protect what we know, but understanding biodiversity today requires us to change scale. We need robust and shared data. We need to connect field-based naturalist expertise with the contributions of research, digital tools, remote sensing, and participatory science. In Montpellier, the Metropolitan Biodiversity Atlas is moving us in this direction. It makes it possible to produce knowledge, but also to build a shared culture. And I would like to acknowledge here the support of the French Biodiversity Agency for this initiative. For local authority, this partnership is precious, it provides method, and it places our local action within a broader national and scientific framework. France needs the French Biodiversity Agency, just as it needs the Agency for Ecological Transition. Both institutions are essential and both have my full support. Second, protecting. This means preserving our biodiversity reservoirs and our ecological corridors, restoring rivers, protecting wetlands and lagoons, and taking ecological continuities into account into our planning documents. It also means making concrete choices that are sometimes very precise, preserving hedgerows, removing waterproof surfaces to give more room to open soil, reducing light pollution, and giving up phytosanitary products. Third, restoring. Because we're not starting from scratch, as in many places in Europe, habitats have been fragmented, impoverished, and artificialized. The mitigation hierarchy, avoid, reduce, compensate, must not be understood as a mere regulatory requirement. It can become a lever for ecological recovery, provided that avoidance comes first, and that impacts are better anticipated, and that restoration measures are part of a coherent national strategy. Finally, educating and mobilizing society, which is very dear to my heart. Biodiversity will not be preserved only through plans, maps, regulations, or by experts, however indispensable they may be. It requires social appropriation. It requires children who can reconnect with nature, grow up outdoors, away from screens. It requires residents who understand why a meadow is not mown and why the night must sometimes become dark again. It requires municipalities, NGOs, farmers, businesses, researchers, citizens who feel that they all are part of the same effort. And this is where the link between science and society becomes decisive. Science produces knowledge. Citizens must be able to understand it, discuss it, and take part in it. And local authorities must turn that knowledge into decisions. And public policies must accept being evaluated, corrected, and adjusted on the basis of the data produced. This is the spirit of biodiversity monitoring. I would like to acknowledge the scientific community. Here in Montpellier, we have a cutting-edge research ecosystem among the most outstanding in France and well beyond. And we'll continue to work together to ensure the quality and relevance of our public policies, particularly within the framework of initiatives such as Med Valley. Because this approach also connects with the concept of One Health. Human health, animal health, ecosystem health can no longer be thought of separately. Climate disruption, the collapse of living systems, the movement of new species, vector-borne risks, pollution, all these elements form one single system. Ladies and gentlemen, this conference raises a central question. How can we build a shared European culture of biodiversity monitoring? How can we harmonize methods without raising local specificities? How can we connect field data, national policies, European strategies, and the very concrete decisions taken in a city and metropolitan areas such as Montpellier? Here, we know that local authorities have a central role to play. We'll deal directly with the necessary and difficult trade-offs. We see the tensions between climate urgency, protection of the living world, social needs, mobility, housing, and food. And that's why we are happy and proud to host this European Week in Montpellier. We see it as a recognition of our efforts, but above all, as an invitation to go further, to work more closely with researchers, to learn from European experiences, and to make data not an end in itself, but a tool serving action, public decision-making, and collective mobilization. So on behalf of Michael Delafosse, I would like to welcome you in Montpellier. May this week be a time of scientific exchange, European cooperation, and shared commitment. Ultimately, monitoring biodiversity is not only about measuring what is disappearing, it's also about giving ourselves the means to see what can be saved, restored, enriched, and passed on. It's about recognizing that we, as human beings, are part of a greater whole, and turning that lucidity into a force for action. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Grégoire. On behalf of the Montpellier Métropole, I'm going to excuse them. Grégoire has to leave shortly, so they won't have much opportunity to interact with him. Thank you so much for coming today and introduce the Montpellier Métropole and opening the BioMonWeek. Now let's welcome one of our big bosses at the French Biodiversity Agency, who was brave enough or maybe fool enough to allow us to undergo this outstanding process to organize this conference, Pierre-Édouard Guillain. Pierre-Édouard. Excellent.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. Dear Mr. Delforge, thank you for your speech and your welcome words. It's very important for us to have your support, and I'm very pleased to have heard your words. Dear responsible for European Commission, distinguished experts, partners, policymakers, colleagues, and organizers, thank you all for being here today. Your diversity, as mentioned by Mathieu, of countries and function is a key success for the week. It is both a pleasure and a great honor for the French Biodiversity Agency to welcome you to the first edition on BioMonWeek here in Montpellier. As you mentioned, Mr. Vice President, the choice of the city is not a coincidence. This city at the crossroad of scientific excellence with this university and all the research institution present in Montpellier. And as you mentioned, ecological Mediterranean richness provides an ideal setting to initiate a collective reflection on biodiversity monitoring across Europe. We are proud as a national agency for biodiversity to take part of it in Montpellier by having some part of the team as Mathieu and all the partners there, and by leading some projects also with local authorities. And I was supposed to, we have a great project with Montpellier Metropole about biodiversity and mediation, and it's very important to have this partnership with them. Let me begin by briefly introducing the French Biodiversity Agency. Our institution is quite unique, I think so. We are a public body that brings together scientific expertise, public policy implementation, and environmental enforcement, operating under the joint supervision of the ministry responsible for ecological transition and agriculture. We share many projects with major French research institutions, ensuring strong links between science and policy, and we have even a joint unit with National Museum. Our work is structured around three main missions. First, generate knowledge. We design and implement national monitoring programs across terrestrial, freshwater, and marine environment. We also support research and provide scientific expertise to inform public policies. For example, we have been funding marine mammal monitoring program since 2011, leading with our partner citizen-based bird monitoring since a long time now, and conducting freshwater fish monitoring using electrofishing methods since 1966. Second task, supporting action. We manage protect areas, not all French areas, but especially marine areas and hunting reserve, and mobilize a wide range of stakeholders, local authorities, of course, farmers, businesses, and citizens to actively contribute to biodiversity conservation. Third, obviously, protect ecosystem. We enforce environmental regulations through controls and criminal investigation, an action aimed at preventing environmental damage. Our commitment is particularly strong in overseas territories where biodiversity is both exceptionally rich and highly vulnerable. We implement targeted programs there, including efforts to control invasive species and protect coral reefs. At the international levels, we actively participate in European and global networks such as ENCA, Biodiversity Plus, HIPBES, and HIBOC, both contributing to and benefiting from shared expertise. Biodiversity monitoring lies at the heart of our work and at the core of this week's discussions. It is framed by major European policies, including the Nature Directive and the recent Nature Restoration Regulation, and it applies across all ecosystems, terrestrial, freshwater, and marine. Monitoring is not an end in itself, of course. It's a critical level for action. As emphasized by initiatives such as GeoBon, you mentioned the last meeting, monitoring biodiversity must ultimately serve decision-making and concrete action. It is a part of a complete value chain closely linked to research. Through frameworks such as Biodiversa Plus, data feeds research, which in turn informs policies and on-the-ground actions. However, to make this system effective, several conditions must be met. We need reliable, comparable, and accessible data supported by a robust data management system. We need harmonized approaches to assess biodiversity status and trend across Europe. We need strong governance, both nationally and transnationally. We must institutionalize and sustain long-term monitoring efforts. And we must expand observation capacities, and we have a large scale for that. At the same time, we must acknowledge current limitations. fragmentation of effort and insufficient coordination remain major challenges. Encouraging initiatives such as Biodiversity Plus have already enabled progress towards shared dashboard and more structured national monitoring systems. In this context, BioMonWeek2026 represents an important milestone. It is the first event of this scale in Europe dedicated to biodiversity monitoring, and it symbolizes a new era of cooperation. This week provides a unique opportunity to share recent advances, and I think there is a lot. Identify existing gaps, and I think there is a lot also. Strengthen our networks and build a shared vision for biodiversity monitoring across Europe. Looking forward, we must remain fully aware of the challenges ahead. These issues we are faced are complex and requires long-term resources and stronger coordination. We must also move beyond siloed approaches between ecosystems and between communities. Monitoring must be connected, shared, and ultimately useful. This call for collective action is strengthening national monitoring networks, including through harmonized protocols and shared tools. We have each other a step to do from each and to the others. Involving all stakeholders, scientists, practitioners, and decision makers at every level, and supporting innovation, both technological and participatory. Above all, we need to build a cohesive community, I think we are, one that understands each other and works together effectively to address these challenges. Ladies and gentlemen, BioMonWeek is a key step forward toward building a more harmonized and coordinated biodiversity monitoring network in Europe, an objective that is becoming increasingly necessary and relevant. I wish you an excellent seminar and fruitful discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Pierre-Édouard. Now, let's introduce all 5 co-organizers. You've seen the logos. Maybe you want to know a little bit more. Let's start with Biodiversa Plus and Ron Wrinkler, who is the co-chair of Biodiversa Plus.
Good morning, everyone. Wow, there's a lot of people up there, way in the dark, when you stand up here. I would like to welcome all of you also on behalf of Biodiversa to this first BioMon Week. Should I? I'm just going to bring this a little bit closer. A little bit closer, like now I can hear myself better. Welcome all of you to this first BioMon Week, also on behalf of Biodiversa. Now, some of you might wonder, what is Biodiversa? First of all, and most importantly for this meeting, Biodiversa is the basic reason that we're all here together, and I will explain that in a moment. But if you look more broadly, Biodiversa is a very large consortium. It's the largest global consortium on biodiversity, spending way over €500 million in the 7 years that we will run. It's made up of different kinds of partners, research organizations, research funders, ministries of research, but also ministries of environment and environmental agencies. So we bring science and policy together. And we do that with about 83 partners it is right now in 41 countries. And we've actually been existing since 2005 and slowly grown until this new instrument came along, the European partnerships that suddenly gave us a jump and doubled our consortium with all the new possibilities, but also new challenges. Now, what do we actually do? We have 4 central themes that we organize our work around. So we protect and restore biodiversity, we promote nature-based solutions, support transformative change, and only one part of what we're doing is improve transnational monitoring. Now we do that with different kinds of activities. So we support, of course, research and innovation. We work on internationalization, so how can we work better within Europe, but also go beyond the borders of Europe to work with other partners. We interface with policy and practice, of course. Biodiversity is very much policy-driven, but we connect more and more towards also businesses. You also see that when we promote nature-based solutions and business valuation. But the important work package that we have for this meeting is harmonizing monitoring schemes. And in that work package, the seed was planted for this meeting. We reserved part of our budget, and then we found people who were crazy enough or enthusiastic enough to actually want to organize a first meeting like this. And seeing the success, you'll be glad to know that we've already reserved money for a next edition, but more on that at the end of this meeting. So I'll just end by saying we have a lot of activities that are related to monitoring. So, for instance, we had one call with monitoring projects. That's 33 projects, 46 million, just on how to improve biodiversity monitoring. We make all kinds of guides and policy briefs and things like that. As an example here, biodiversity in business. How can businesses better understand key policies? Also, how can they use public data, but also share their own data, their company data better, so that researchers can use those. And on monitoring, very specifically, we have started 3 new pilot projects. So we have in all 9 experimental projects testing new approaches to biodiversity, which is a bottom-up instrument. Countries just propose it together, develop it together, and then start to actually try out transnational monitoring on specific subjects. So come visit our booth. You can hear more about all these activities, and who knows what seeds we can plant for new activities in the future. So thank you very much. Enjoy these days, and look forward to talking with you.
Next, we have the Alliance for Nature, who is going to be represented by our 2 distinguished colleagues, Eric Rieux and Suzon Bédu.
Can I ask another round of applause for Mathieu and his team, who have worked very, very hard for all of us to be here. So I am Eric Rieux and I represent Alliance for Nature. I work for a company called Biotop, and we are a group of companies. I'll explain a little bit. Our mission at Alliance for Nature is to ensure the protection of biodiversity while we support the development of human activities in a sustainable way. Our values are around 3 themes. Passion. I think a lot of you here share the passion for nature and biodiversity. And then we look at our people. We take care of our people across the different companies within the Alliance. And we also make a point of being independent. I'll explain a little bit of what we do, but we are free from any bias, any lobby from large industries or financing. We work with all sectors of the economy, energy, infrastructure, agriculture, and so on, tourism. But we also work with the financing sector, both on the public side with multilateral development bank on the international level, but also private financing. We have a session during BioMonWeek on biodiversity credits. I hope you come in, as we are looking for ways to bring more money into protecting nature as governments are running out of money. How can we engage more the private sector to do this? So we have a role both on the regulatory side, but also on the voluntary side, working with the private sector. We have 12 companies right now in Alliance for Nature. It continues to grow, mostly in Europe. It's about 1,100 people, but we also have people in Africa, Asia, South America, 32 nationalities, and we work in 130 different countries. And I like to say that we also have a lot of fun in what we do. Reason we're here at BioMonWeek is because we are the crossroad of the private sector, government bodies, financing sector, both at local, regional, and national level. And I'll leave Suzon to explain what we do on the research side.
Thank you very much, Eric. Hello, everyone. So as we've heard, it's great momentum for biodiversity, and we're very happy to be part of it at EU and international level. In the Alliance for Nature, we have a lot of you guys. So people having passion and in-house expertise for biodiversity monitoring. They've been doing research and innovation for more than 30 years, inventing the new methodology, the new technologies for monitoring biodiversity across all realms in all ecosystem, onshore, offshore, on land, freshwater and marine environments. And they've been building collaborations and partnerships with the research world to achieve these great results. So now we are building this further with Alliance for Nature. We're looking forward to have new partnerships, to bring up new collaborations for doing more research, and also making sure we can transfer this research knowledge into practice, because we're really helping, as Eric presenting, the business sectors to be less impactful, to better preserve and restore biodiversity. So we need also your help and your knowledge to make this for the greater results. So we are very glad to be here and co-organizers of this BioMon Week. We would like to wish you an instructive, creative, and collaborative event. Thank you very much.
Our next co-organizers is going to be BioAgora. Let me introduce you to Maria Blasi. Maria, welcome aboard.
Okay, hello everyone, good morning, and welcome to this event. I'm going to speak on behalf of BioAgora and the Biodiversity Monitoring Knowledge Expert Network, just to give you like a few insight. So in BioAgora, it's a Horizon Europe program, and we have like 22 partners all over Europe. And the basic aim of this project is to really connect the research results on biodiversity to the decisions of decision making. So it's basically the main outcome is to really have this fair and functional science service for biodiversity, which is the science policy interface at the EU level. So it was already like established for the EU biodiversity strategy for 2030 to have really this functional science service. No? So the aim is to really like have a link between the research, the impact into meaningful like policy feedback. So then our mandate is not to really create something new. It's to really like to work with the different projects and then to minimize like the duplication of work. And then mobilize all the different networks of knowledge and the experts. So that's what we call the knowledge exchange networks, the KENs. Very briefly, like BioAgora forms like these three main functions that it's like all of them embedded with each other. So it's really like the core function is to answer requests and building up evidence. So the request comes from the European Commission, and then the idea is to mobilize the requests thanks to creating and supporting these active thematic networks that I'm going to give few examples. And the real thing is to really transform the processes within and between science and policy, to really change what's not working until now, and then to really move towards this transformative change that is so needed for preservation of biodiversity. Very briefly, this is just like to say that these bidirectional aspects of when it comes to requests from the Commission and then how we mobilize the knowledge community when it's what we call so the requests, no? And then it comes back, we mobilize the relevant EU projects and initiatives, and that comes back to the European Commission. These are just the few networks that already exist, and we are here in this conference, 3 of them present, so come and talk to us as well in the booth, get more information, and many more to come. So this is just like starting and building more networks depending on which topic. And here I'm presenting the monitoring camp, so we have been the part of being co-organizers of this network. So our goal is to really like build on this nature directive related to birds and habitats directives, the biodiversity strategy, of course, links with IPES. And then basically what we want to have is this opportunity, no, to increase the impact from research, as I said, by bringing together all these projects and initiatives with key policy needs. We already said that this is not a like scientific conference as we are maybe researchers used to have, no? So we're bringing much more, and we really facilitate this arena, no, for discussion and collaboration between research and policy in this case. Yes, and then we want to also explore the synergies and trade-offs across realms and also like facilitate this between projects. As I said, we don't want to build something else, but if the answer is already there, we need to foster this collaboration and between the projects on creating synergies and collaborations. Yes, and oops, sorry, that's it for me. Thank you, and wishing you a very good conference, and please come talk to us, and yeah, have a good time.
Our next co-organizer is GBIF, represented here by Anne-Sophie Archambeau. She's the head of the French node of the GBIF. Anne-Sophie, welcome on stage.
Thank you. Where will you take it? Hi, everyone. Let me introduce you to the GBIF. It's the Global Biodiversity Information Facility. It's really the world's largest biodiversity data provider, the infrastructure. Sorry, I don't see really well my screen. Too small, sorry. I've got my heels. We provide more than 3.6 billion of data, and they are coming from 122,000 data sets. We are really built on museums, research infrastructure, public institutions, citizen science, also private sector data, and DNA-derived data, lots of them. And of course, as we are here in the BioMonitoring Week, we are helped to provide and show monitoring data. And really the aim is to give free access and way to publish biodiversity data and monitoring. So we provide lots of tutorials. We give some best practice guidance. And for example, you can also discover, GBIF is a nice discovery platform for survey monitoring and sensor-based data. And we just provided a publishing guide about monitoring data. So you can have a look at this. We provide support. There is GBIF nodes in most of the European countries and Central Asia. So please rely on these GBIF nodes, contact them. There is a booth here also, and you can learn more for, there is differentiation on Biodiversity Monitoring Week. And so please go to the booth, look at the sessions. And I think I will do it quickly, like this. Thank you all. Sorry.
Thank you, Anne-Sophie. And last but not least, let's welcome Isabelle Sousa Pinto from the University of Porto, who's going to represent MARCO-BOLO. Isabelle, welcome on stage. Next, could you 5 minutes now?
Yes. Well, thank you, Mathieu. And so I'm going to present very briefly the MARCO-BOLO, this Marine Coastal Biodiversity Long-Term Observations. So what we do, we really, well, as the name says, we really focus on improving the monitoring of biodiversity, but on marine, but also coastal and freshwater systems. And what we do, we really do not go and monitor sites, but we first map existing monitoring efforts in Europe. And of course, for that, we work with many other projects because there are a lot of mapping exercises, but we are always finding new things. There are always new programs starting. So we try to identify major gaps in data availability. As you probably all know, in the marine realm, we have huge gaps of knowledge. The marine environment is very inaccessible for us, so we have very big gaps, but we also have a lot of activity. And so we are testing new methods really to improve and increase our capability to monitor marine biodiversity and also in freshwater. So we tested a lot of eDNA approaches to support biodiversity indicators, really for the users. And we are developing, of course, a lot of different technologies from multiple sensor networks, imaging, satellites that really receive signals from our robots that go underwater, because satellites cannot really see underwater, and also sound and many other technologies. We also engage extensively with the diverse stakeholder community, and this was really a part, and Lisa Benedetti is there, she was chairing this part. And so we had this community of practice that is from the data providers, the people that go into the field that are not always scientists or should not be mainly scientists, so the people that really do the monitoring, to then the whole chain until we get to the users that really need the products, not just the data, but products that they use for policy, for industry, and so on. So we created this community of practice to improve the whole process, including data management. And we actually have a very big, we did a lot of work on data management also, and Dan Lear is also somewhere, and we'll talk a lot about this in different sessions, to really go beyond what we have now, status quo, and we actually produce data management plan that we offer to other projects, really, so they don't have to start from scratch. So we are asked why we accept to be the offer from Biodiversa to be co-organizers of this meeting. And of course, as you see, this is our focus, is monitoring our focus. And of course, we are very, very excited and happy to collaborate, really to bring the marine community in. And 15% is not bad for a meeting that is not marine. So in the future, maybe will be better. But we really try to engage as much as possible, not just our project, but really the marine projects that we have out there working on improving the marine biodiversity monitoring, and really to create new partnerships. We believe, and I particularly believe that it's very good to bring together these communities from the different realms. We have a lot to learn from each other, so this will be a very good opportunity to also create new partnerships. And we have a booth that actually is not a booth from MARCO-BOLO, it's a booth from the marine biodiversity community. We have information on different projects, and we have several workshops, and so if you want to know more, just come and see us. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Isabelle. Before I move to some boring stuff, it was a pleasure to work with all these co-organizers, all these motivated people. They worked really hard to make this conference alive, so please join me to applaud all of them for their hard work. Thank you very much. Now for the boring stuff, but very important nevertheless. Practical information, you should all have a badge. If you don't, go to the welcome booth, get it. Please scan it every day. We are monitoring biodiversity in the facility. More seriously, we need to know who made it to the event. Please scan it every day. Very critically, timing is key, so please keep a close eye on timing. Unfortunately, we didn't set aside time to move in between sessions and in between rooms, so you're on your own on that. Try to think of the program in terms of sessions and even better in terms of blocks. If it works for you, stay in a block of time until the next break in the same room. If you need to move, be quiet, just respect the timing of speakers and workshops and all the same. Speakers, in particular, be in your room before the beginning of the session and identify yourself to the chair. If you did not upload your slide, you can still do it. Go to the welcome booth as soon as possible. There's a computer for you there because the slides are then dispatched in every single room. Chairs, you're in charge of your session, including order of speakers and timing. You will have signed with the typical 3 minutes, 1 minute, 0 minute left, and then you're allowed to shoot at will. Nevertheless, more seriously, you're also in control of the timing. There's an app, a BioMonWeek app, that you could and should all have on your phone that will help you navigate the whole conference. You can either scan that, or there's a QR code, I think, on the welcome booth as well. Then you fill in your email. It's an easy process. It shows the program. It shows where you contribute, but you can also bookmark your favorite sessions. You can search it. You can search for posters and talks as well. So it's not perfect, but it's pretty good, I think. Use it. Book of abstracts. We finally have it. Flash this QR code. I think it's also on the welcome booth. I'm sure there's plenty of mistakes because we had to move things at the last minute. There were cancellations. There were last-minute additions. We did our best. Nevertheless, it includes plenaries, booths, talks, and posters. There are 3 printed versions available for reading at the welcome desk and around. Use them as well. Posters. If you have a poster, check your session in the program. You're either PS1 on Tuesday or PS2 on Wednesday. You have to be present on the session you're in at your poster during this 1 hour. But your poster can stay for the whole event on the poster panel. So you come in the poster lobby, which is Joffre over there. As soon as you want, pick a poster panel with either number 1 if you're in PS1 or number 2 if you're on PS2. Use the stickers and put it on the panel. Please remove them by Thursday, 5 o'clock. People at the booth, same thing. I forgot to ask. Please remove everything by Thursday at 5 o'clock. Workshops, most of them, there are plenty of them if you've looked at the program, and we're super happy with that. Most of them are totally open until capacity is reached. So if you want to join one, be there early maybe, make sure there's room for you. However, the following 2, if I forgot some, please let me know, are open on registration only. Go check in at the welcome booth again. There's the Successful Citizen Sciences Approaches for Long-Term and Cost-Effective Monitoring, which happened tomorrow morning. Konstantinos has a poster also this afternoon that will introduce you this workshop. There's also the serious game for Bridging Minds that happens twice. Tuesday, that's tonight from 5:30 to 7, and tomorrow from 5:30 to 7 again. This is these are small groups, so be sure to also register at the welcome booth. The venue itself, basically we have the whole floor upstairs. That's your living space. On my right-hand side, your left-hand side, there's the open space around that's called Joffre. You have the booths and posters. You have everything for the breaks and lunches. Basically, food and drinks will be there. Then you have all the separate rooms for talks and workshops. On this aisle, you have Joffre F and G. On this one, you have Sully 1, 2, and 3. Upstairs, the only thing you have that is not on this floor is Rondelet and Barthez, these 2 rooms only. Other than that, stick on this floor. For your well-being, there are unisex, gender-neutral toilets. I hope we put the signs on. If not, we'll have to check that. There's one of them. And the quiet room. The quiet room, if you need a space that's quiet. You need to isolate yourself from the crowd, from the noise, from anything. Go there, follow the signs, respect each other in silence. On request, all rooms after the meetings from 5:30 to 7 can be booked for semi-private meetings if you need a space to work with colleagues, for instance. Just go at the welcome booth. We keep a list of that. How to reach the gala dinner? That's tonight. By foot, that's possible, weather allowing. 35 minutes. You can also take the tramway. That's 15 minutes. There's a single line. That's line 4. Look up for the Hôtel de Ville, which is City Hall. Easy to get there. Be on time. It's going to be a great party tonight. One thing I forgot with the badge. Some of us have orange lanyards. This is everybody involved in organization. If you have a question, you're lost. Worst case scenario, you're harassed. Please get to somebody with the orange lanyard, ask your questions. We're here for that. You will also have people with the blue lanyard. These are our volunteering students. I warmly thank them for their contribution. It's very appreciated. You can also go to them and ask them questions. I guess they're here for that too. All of you have a green lanyard. Last thing, again, timing is key. Please a close eye on timing. And I'm perfectly on time, so I can actually say it loud. Most of it, have fun, talk to each other, establish links, connections, bridges across realms, across expertise, across jobs, across countries. That's why we're here. That's to make this community alive. So do that, talk to each other, and have fun. Now it's time for me to leave the mic to Henri Lannes, who is going to be our host and MC, I guess. And he's going to guide us through the first plenary. And probably I'm just going to crash and enjoy also the show with you all. Thank you very much, and have fun.
Give it up for Mathieu Basille. Thank you very much. And you were a perfect student because you were right on time. Yes, you can leave. You can go to do your very rempli, as we say, your filled agenda, because I know you are still hard at work, and you will have a very good, deserved break after this week, I hope, for you and Guillaume and all of the team at the French Biodiversity Agency. Thank you so much for your organization, for your work. And what a great room once again, all of you working on biodiversity in one way or another, biodiversity monitoring. And we are going to start with a great session on bridging the gap between research and policy, and how biodiversity monitoring is an opportunity for that, but it also a realm in which we need to avoid working in silos. We need to promote interdisciplinary work. We need to promote the linkage between research, policy making, on the ground field work, observation, and we're going to do that with two great keynote speakers and a third panelist who will join me in a few minutes. We are going to do two 20-minute presentations, and I thank you very much for your attention, for your participation. The questions that you will have for our two keynote speakers, save them for the panel, which will be right afterwards, okay? Because if we get into a question and answer right after each keynote, we're not going to be able to respect the time for the panel. So remember your questions for the two keynote speakers. And we're going to talk about advancing biodiversity monitoring. We're going to talk about where we are at, what's the future of this realm of research, the projects at the European Union level. And we're going to do so, you're going to welcome her to the stage in just a moment with a professor, honorary professor of University College London, Institute of the Zoology and the Zoological Society of London. She is a professor in biodiversity science, climate change ecology. Please welcome very warmly and with great enthusiasm, Professor Nathalie Pettorelli.
Bonjour. Good morning. It's lovely to be here. Thank you for having me. I'm going to try to make it to 20 minutes exactly. Thank you. So I've been asked to talk about advancing biodiversity monitoring, something that I've been working on for more than 20 years now. And so I thought that I'll start with a simple thing, which is, what do I mean by biodiversity? Because sometimes we don't all mean the same. So here I adopt, and I've always adopted, the definition of the Convention of Biological Diversity. So for me, biodiversity goes from genes to species to ecosystem, and has dimensions that include composition, structure, and functioning. Why do we pay attention to biodiversity? Again, it's been quite funny. When I started some decades ago, biodiversity loss was not something that triggered a lot of attention from policymakers. And I'd say that has improved, but it's still way off from climate change, for example. And over the years, there's been a lot of discussion as to what do we pay attention to biodiversity. And Georgina Mace, who was the director of the Institute of Zoology when I started over there, made this really good paper in 2014 where she looked at the different value, going for nature for itself, which was a predominant paradigm in the 60s, literally valuing nature for what it is. Then going from nature despite people, and this is when we started to realize that there was a lot of extinction and a lot of degradation. Then there was this whole narrative around nature for people. This is when we saw the emergence of the ecosystem services narrative. And now there is also this narrative about people and nature, so trying to find sustainability and resilience. And none of these narratives are exclusive on one another, and although they appeared in different order in time, and they are all still very relevant to discussion over nowadays. So has nature become a more pressing issue? I would say yes, and I find it interesting to understand why. For the 20 plus years, what I've seen is a rise, more and more rise and concern over the climate change crisis. And indeed, we have more than one crisis. We have the biodiversity one, we have the climate one, we have the health one, we have the land degradation one, we have several of them. And those, the pollution one, and those ones are linked. And there's been quite some work for the past 5-6 years now on showing and demonstrating the linkages between the climate change crisis and the biodiversity crisis, showing that climate change does in fact impact biodiversity, but biodiversity loss also impacts both our ability to capture carbon, but also our ability to adapt to global environmental change. And in my view, this is where we started to have traction in terms of getting policymakers to pay attention to biodiversity loss, literally when it started to appear into conventions such as the UNFCCC. So what are we trying to do? Well, whenever we're paying attention to biodiversity, it's not just to know whether it's going up and down, but it's also trying to reconcile, as we heard before, those different agendas between food security, between adaptation, between mitigation, between national security, infrastructure development. And so there is concern, first, to understand when does biodiversity loss actually become really a problem for society? When do ecosystem collapse start to have huge societal impact? Where will change happen? So who is actually particularly vulnerable to this? And also, how do we best recover nature? So biodiversity monitoring goes well beyond just knowing biodiversity trends. It's really about making decisions in a way that is coordinated among different environmental agendas. And this is where I wanted to situate the discussion around biodiversity monitoring, because for me, it is about developing models. So it's not just about knowing trends and patterns, but actually making prediction as to what will happen to try to guide decision, both in terms of preservation, but also in terms of restoration, and identify the win-win, but most importantly, help inform trade-off. So data observation is one thing. And building indicator is also part of the story, but so is attribution, which is getting the right data to understand what shapes most change in biodiversity. So is projection, so that we can go to policymakers and say, if you continue to do this, we are relatively confident that this will go like that, so this will go like that. And then inform mitigation and intervention in the best evidence-based way. So the question is, of course, do we have everything that we need? And the answer, I would say, is not exactly. So the first problem that has been alluded to previously is a problem of representation. And so if we look at the species level, which is arguably the dimension most monitored in biodiversity, we have issues with taxonomic coverage, with a focus on charismatic and popular species. We have an issue around spatial coverage. Some areas are better monitored than others. We have a problem with methodological coverage. This is where we use different methods in different parts, which creates issue around harmonization and interoperability. Again, something that was hit by biodiversity speaker before. And then also we have this problem of data that are not systematically findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable, fair, which means that it can't be used to support intervention. So things need to be monitored again because we can't access the data that already exists but can't be used. I would say, though, that the representation goes beyond the problem of species, taxonomic, and spatial. If we go back to the definition of biodiversity, we spend a lot of time looking at species and species-related dimension, and not that much at genes or ecosystem. From my point of view, and of course I would say that you need a genetic person to make the case for genetics, but I will make the case for ecosystem here. This is a particle problem, because ecosystem is the fundamental unit, literally the fundamental unit as defined by Tansley, who 90 years ago introduced first the concept of ecosystem, the fundamental unit of life. This is the concept that links up the different environmental agenda, because it is ecosystem that produce food. It is ecosystem that helps us adapt. It is ecosystem that provide the habitats for the various species. And it is the concept that is used by the Rio Convention. And so if we don't have a good perspective on what's happening at the ecosystem level, we are in a bad position for aligning environmental agendas, and therefore find ways at the societal level that really take into account those different needs and priorities. So why ecosystems are not monitored as well as the rest? I'd say from what I've heard, a lot of people for a long time didn't think that ecosystem exists. I had people telling me that as long as you have a species list, you should be able to tell, frankly, whether it's an ecosystem or not. I had people that mix up the concept of ecosystem and habitat, and I had people that literally think that this is just too complex. We don't know what to do with it, we can't monitor it, let's just move on with what we can. To that, I'd say that's not true. We have moved on, we have a definition of ecosystem, we have a typology of ecosystem as adopted by the IUCN, and we have a framework for looking at vulnerability of ecosystem. This is not the only problem that we have, though. Because we are not paying attention to ecosystems, which are the product of biotic and abiotic interaction, we have not paid much attention to those abiotic processes. And they are key for ecosystem functioning. So if we don't understand, if we don't monitor them well, and if we don't understand the relationship between biotic and biotic, we are unlikely to make progress in terms of ecosystem functioning and ecosystem monitoring. And it's only now that we're starting to pay attention to geodiversity, which is good when we need to do more. The third one is about the places of human. We continue to develop narrative, or many of us, or at least I have been in many conferences hearing about human as negative externalities, is how I summarize it, where we look at nature as if we were in part of it, as if we were only negatively hampering it, and opposing anthropogenic ecosystem from natural one, basically promoting that the idea somehow that nature is better without human. We also do not pay that much attention to connection between ecosystem or system in general. So the fact that ecosystems are not in one go, they interact with other ecosystems. This is really well demonstrated in the marine environment, where you can see seagrass, where you can see kelp forest, corals interacting together to cater for various parts of the cycle of some species, which ultimately makes all those ecosystems work well together. And then the last one is, of course, climate change. So we know that those two crises are related, but we keep on thinking about historical benchmark, and we keep to think about how it was before and how we need to bring it back to where it was. But that's not going to happen in many situations, simply because climate change is happening, and then a lot of species are moving around. We are literally witnessing a reshuffling of the biodiversity worldwide, which means that we are seeing the emergence of new communities, new arrangements. And that is a problem if you're stuck in a compositionalist approach where you're looking for it should be there, it shouldn't be there, when things are trying to reorganize in a functional way, whether or not those things were there to start with or not. So within those shortcomings, I actually think we are in a good space for making progress, because there's a bunch of opportunities that are coming up. First, on the conceptual level, we really see the rise of complex science, which really helps when you're thinking about ecosystem. So understanding feedback loops, understanding aggregation of metrics, trying to think about what makes sense for that system as opposed to what makes sense for that component of that system. On the technical level, we are seeing development, whether it comes from algorithm for harmonization, AI, or digital twins. And then on the data, of course, we have an explosion of technology going from remote sensing, well, a bunch of remote sensing technology, really, as well as eDNA and DNA-based metagenomics also. But we also have opportunity from policy level. So first, in the EU, you get the nature restoration regulation that opens a lot of opportunity for putting biodiversity management at the forefront. So really a good platform for seriously advancing agendas around restoration. But we also have some discussion on a European biodiversity observation coordination, which in my view would make a massive opportunity for tackling some of the representation issue that we have. So what's my take on all of this? I'm 6 minutes in. So the first one would be that I would really urge people to consider adopting an ecosystem approach to complement the current species approach. And that's because it really provides the framing for the development of a whole of society strategy. And it's a strategy we really need to tackle the challenges we are in. It's a narrative about connection, interdependency, system and functioning that really complements the composition-based narrative that we have been talking to date. If we were to really advance on this, that of course requires discussion about funding prioritization and changes to funding schemes, but also it would probably help promote interdisciplinary thinking, which we need so much. The third one would be about the fact that nature matters everywhere. So if we are to engage the whole of society with nature, we need to start where people live. And people live in anthropogenic ecosystems, and those ecosystems are heavily, heavily under-researched. So we need to actually pay attention to those systems that might not look as good as this, the Attenborough documentary, but they are really crucial for people because they deliver the services, and this is the nature that people interact with, most of humanity interact with on a daily basis. It will also help stopping the narrative that the value of nature depends on whether or not people are there. And then we need assessment that really work for all those type of ecosystems. Bearing in mind that the current framework for assessing ecosystem functioning and vulnerability to global environmental change comes from conservation biology, which has a focus on those natural ecosystems as opposed to more anthropogenic one. A second part of reflection is about thinking about those students in the room, those next generation. I would say that we need to have those, they're called boundary spanners. These are people that go beyond their discipline to really start to be having some understanding of other understanding so that they can operate across those disciplines and bring people together. And that would make a huge difference in terms of strengthening our policy pathways. We also need to think beyond place-based solution. A lot of those discussions about biodiversity always end up with we need to restore nature, we need to protect more protected area. Well, there's a bunch of stuff we can also do that would impact positively nature but are not place-based. Just think about reducing demand and consumption. These are part of the solution too, and we do need to pay attention to that too. In that same vein, there is, for those people that do engage with policy, we tend to focus on government-led frameworks, such as Rio Convention. But there is a whole other side of world society, which are called action agenda, which are when, this is the part of those conventions that try to engage non-state actors, so business, NGOs, general public, and really try to coordinate action there. And for the moment, we don't pay attention that much to those action agenda. And then the final point here, my final point, would be that we are very good at talking to ourselves. And so if we really take into account the fact that biodiversity matters for food production, for infrastructure, for energy, for everything, then we need to be those voices in those departments. We can't just focus and work on the department for nature. We need to get into the department for agriculture. We need to get into the department for energy. We need to get into the other departments so that nature has a voice there too. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Professor, and have a seat here. We are going to have a good panel afterwards where we're going to go into questions and answers on how we can continue to bridge this gap. And we're now going to have the pleasure to listen to kind of a presentation of a panorama of policy on biomonitoring with a European Union perspective, obviously, but also, once again, we are here to talk about worldwide policies, research, and biodiversity monitoring. Welcome to the stage. She is at the DG Environment of the European Commission in the Natural Capital Ecosystem Health Unit. Thank you for welcoming very warmly to the stage Mrs. Marialuisa Tamborra.
Yes, good morning, and thank you, Mr. Chair. I have the pleasure now to guide you through the meanders of European policies after the very inspiring talk by Professor Pettorelli. Thank you so much. I think it gives me really the hint for entering into the core of the matter, which is how to guide action, how to guide policies. Now, first, I'd like to spend a few words about the evolution of the biodiversity policies over time. So from the EU nature directives, which are the backbone of our biodiversity legislation, to the nature restoration regulation that was adopted in 2004. So the basis for our biodiversity monitoring is built upon two main directives, one from '79, the Birth Directive, and the Habitat Directives, with the two pillars on species and habitats, and the establishment of the Natura 2000 framework, or network rather. It covers a wide variety of habitats, representing 18% of EU land and 8% of sea, but also with many species, 1,400 or approximately, with the objective to ensure and maintain and restore favorable conservation status of those habitats and species. So it's built upon a method for assessment of these conservation status that is an obligation by member states, which report to the EA, so the EU scale assessment is done by the EEA, the European Environment Agency, looking at species and habitats and a wide range of parameters that are assessed according to a scale of favorable and unfavorable status. Now, this is built upon also expertise, but of course shows also that there has been a constrained approach to biodiversity because, first of all, only 14% of habitats in the last report by the agency are in a favorable condition. But also, it shows many indicators shows the urgency of action. For example, there has been a decrease since 2010 of 35% of natural carbon sinks. Also, there is a high risk of crop failures in Southern Europe. There is an alert also on rivers that exceed the high flood threshold. And also there is an awareness of these risks that is becoming more and more urgent also from the business sector, because it has been assessed that more than 70% of businesses, they depend on at least one ecosystem service. So as precisely said, so we have moved to a different approach, which is to look not only at protected areas, but to have a more ecosystem approach into a broader range of ecosystems, not only, let's say, natural and semi-natural habitats, but also ecosystems that are highly anthropogenic, like urban ecosystems. There has been also the idea to act with a regulation because of the urgency, which is a which has a direct transposition into and application into member states. So what is important to note, it's also that it does not replace the existing legislation. It actually works in synergies with the existing ones, the nature directives that I already presented, but also the Marine Strategy Framework Directive and the Water Framework Directive that are main pillars of our EU environmental legislation. How it is implemented, and this goes back to your talk as well. So the idea is to have member states by September this year present national restoration plans, but they need to work in synergy with other plans. For example, of course, the biodiversity plans, then BSAP, but also energy and climate plans, rivers management plans, river basin management plans, etc. They also need, of course, very importantly, to be aligned with the CAP, the Common Agricultural Policy plans. And then from those plans, of course, there is a monitoring system according to defined indicators that track the progress against targets. Also, finally, a reporting that is overseen by the EEA, the European Environmental Agencies. I already said there are a number of ecosystems that are targeted by these legislations, and there is also an area which is pollinators I would like to highlight because, yes, thank you, so lovely. Yes, I have a little bit of cold and thank you. I don't think I have a place to, thank you so much. So there is a very important implementation in that descend from the nature restoration regulation in the area of pollinators monitoring, but also, of course, a number of guidance that have been produced. So for the pollinators, there is a legal obligation already in the NRR. Member states are required first to reverse the decline of pollinators and then increase the trend after 2030, but then there is an obligation to monitor abundance and diversity. At the same time, the regulation says that the Commission has to define a monitoring method that is harmonized across member states. So that is what was done since 2019, building on a number of projects, but I would like to mention two. One is STING, that was coordinated by the Joint Research Center, but with a wide variety of experts. Some of you probably are here today to develop a EU pollinator monitoring scheme, EU POMS in short, that was then tested by the Spring project, and then this helped developing the delegated act with now kind of frameworks that is very specific on the science-based method that needs to be used for the annual monitoring on abundance and diversity of pollinator species, and a definition on how to sample the various sites and how many sites and how they need to be chosen to be statistically significant. So then another example, which is not a regulatory one, but of course it's also very important, in the context of the Water Framework Directive, that there is the so-called process of common implementation framework, which adopted criteria for identifying free-flowing river stretches. So this is a contribution to the general objective already enshrined in the EU Biodiversity Strategy for 2030, which is to have at least 25,000 kilometers of rivers restored into free-flowing rivers by 2030. So with this guidance, the idea is to provide the support for member states to make an inventory of artificial barriers, remove those that are obsolete, restore floodplains, and maintain the connectivity. So here you have the link. Another piece of legislation I would like to mention here, because it's very relevant for monitoring, it's an area that has been an hotspot for so long, is soil. So now we have directive in place, so it addresses all soils, including urban soils, so contaminated soil, for example, and it has a staged approach which builds also on existing monitoring and policies. The aspirational objective is to achieve soil health, but also to improve soil resilience. We will see that later, with a set of harmonized indicators in terms of physical, chemical, and biological, but also, I will get to that, of course, with biodiversity ones as well. It looks also at contaminated sites and sets up a governance system, including support to farmers and landowners to adopt more, let's say, sustainable practices. Of course, an important pillar in this staged approach is also to improve the knowledge base. There is some work that is done from the Joint Research Center, again, on harmonizing the methods, analyzing the indicators that are collected. But of course, it's also a call on researchers to provide the necessary expertise, because we have many gaps, knowledge gaps in this area. Well, here it's about the objective. As I said, it addressed a wide variety of policies. First, the climate, but also the biodiversity policies, disaster resilience, also food, as well as health. And it also has, well, sorry about this slide. I thought, oh, okay. It doesn't come out very clearly. What I wanted to say here is that it's an approach that is stepwise, and it will start to, for mapping specifically biodiversity with eDNA metabarcoding, but with the idea to improve over time the variety of indicators. So here, I would like to spend a bit of time to speak about the EU soil mission. The missions are research-driven initiatives, but with the aim to have a really action and change in policies. And here we have funded a number of projects in the first part of the Horizon Europe calls. There are 62, and there is the objective to fund 100 living labs. It's a new concept with really sites, testing and validating practices, exchanging knowledge about practices. It covers different bioregions, biogeographical regions, as you can see, and the idea is, with the new calls, to fund 60, 70 more. Well, then I'd like to spend a little bit of time to see what is new in the agenda. As you may know, there has been a new initiative, the so-called water resilience communication has been adopted, which involves also some changes in biodiversity monitoring. Recently, in December last year, we had a workshop on Copernicus, the launch of a new Copernicus hub, the water thematic hub, not to be mixed up with other hubs we will talk about, but it's really to enhance Earth observation, the use of Earth observation for biodiversity monitoring in freshwater. Of course, I'd like also to mention this updated Water Framework Directive, which is the most recent piece of legislation, which introduces an AI-powered freshwater monitoring. So it's an enhanced monitoring, looking at a wider variety of, as it has been highlighted, of tools and methods that can be used, ranging from remote sensing, Earth observation, in situ sensors, but also citizen science, to leverage also the opportunities offered by artificial intelligence, data analysis, and processing. So, next one is about the European Ocean Pact. You might have already heard that certainly the marine community knows very well about this. But what I would like to highlight here is the new observation system, because of course the Ocean Pact has many priorities that you can see on the screen. I would like to focus on the one on advancing ocean research, knowledge, skills and innovation, which introduces a new initiative called the so-called EU Ocean Observation Initiative. So this covers observation campaigns, infrastructure, and also with the aim to provide key services to a wide variety of users. It's an idea of, here again, to uncover an area that has been a little bit, that is a little bit unknown to us still. So in June already, our President von der Leyen, announced the initiative to say that, of course, it builds on the digital twin, and it will help Europe become a global leader in ocean science and technology and security, but of course with the idea to ally with other countries, so to make it, she made a call to other countries. So in March this year, she was able to launch the International Alliance with other countries to have a framework for coordinated action and observation. And the EU will contribute already in 26-27 with a 50 million euro from Horizon Europe to contribute to this initiative. In March, she also unveiled the name. The name of this initiative will be the Ocean Eye. So now when you will see the Ocean Eye, that is the initiative that we refer to. There is another strand of, let's say, of innovation, of new agendas. They relate to the simplification agenda, with the idea that legislators also they need to pay attention to cost-effective monitoring. So an exercise has been launched. It's called the stress test for the Birds and Habitat Directive, with the objective to basically test and assess the fitness of of these directives to reach the objective in a cost-effective way. So that is an important issue. We need to be cost-efficient and reduce unnecessary administrative burdens. It also builds on a fitness check that was done in 2016 and, of course, the conclusions from those. This stress test just started in February with a study and with some dialogues that already took place with Commissioner Roswell, our commissioner for DG Environment, but also Commissioner for Agriculture, Commissioner Hansen. And now we are preparing for the public consultation. This exercise will finish by the end of the year. Now I'd like to spend a few words because, as you have seen, of course, Word is not perfect, but from the EU Biodiversity Strategy for 2030, so since 2020, we have put in place a more structured approach to science policy interface. So there has been an effort really to go in this direction, and we have built this quite complex scheme. I don't have time to explain it, but in very detail, but what shows is that we have biodiversity providers on one hand side and users on the other side. The providers, of course, are Eurostat. I mentioned several times the Joint Research Center, but also, of course, the European Environment Agency. I mentioned also Horizon projects and partnerships, initiatives, and other projects, as well as, it has been presented earlier, also some non-governmental organizations that provide useful information. So all this panorama has been, let's say, this interface has been structured with a lack of brokering system, which is the so-called the Knowledge Center for Biodiversity. It's a center, probably some of you are aware, which is, well, has its secretariat in the JRC, but of course has different players around it. And of course, is built upon also different projects. So you see some of those names on this nice slide. It is a system that is helping translating policy, science into policy terms. Now it's expanding to serve also the CBD Convention to 45 European countries, so it's broader than just the EU27. And it's going to be active. I mean, it has been launched already. It's going to be known as Sub-Regional European Technical and Scientific Cooperation Support Center, in short, TSCC. And it will have, of course, a certain number of hubs. So again, hubs, which build upon existing knowledge. So we are in the process of organizing those. But I don't have more time. I just want to, so of course this is a main scheme also for the CBD reporting. But I'd like to highlight, as many of you, all of us said, of course we don't do monitoring for the sake of monitoring, but for doing assessment and measure achievement, but more importantly, steer new policies. So we have a number of tools to do so. The EA is preparing, on the basis of the nature directives, the State of Nature report. We have the one coming up at the end of this year. We also have from the EA dashboards, guidelines, lookup tables. I'd like also to show the BIS web portal that serves different policies, including the Nature Restoration Regulation. We also have the JRC, producing also the JRC so-called ecosystem assessment. It's known under the acronym of MICE, which is mapping and assessment of ecosystems and their services. The first one has been published with, you see both the technical reports and the summary for policymakers, but the first one is a methodological report that is paving the way for the second ecosystem assessment. Of course, we have the Knowledge Center, as I said already. It has a number of tools. More important one I want to show is the dashboard. And finally, I'd like to say, final slide, this is a case where these data can also be useful for financial institutions and wider for the business sector. I built up here the case very shortly of the nature credits, where in France is pioneering in this area. It's not yet really an initiative. It's a roadmap. You can see the various steps that will build around 2 years. It started in 2025 and will continue until the end of the year. We have already set up an expert group, but what is important to say is that we need data on biodiversity to create a market that is trustful, that has credibility. And the main aim here is to leverage private funding along with the, I said private, yes, private finance along with the public funds. But with this idea to reward nature-positive action, both conservation and restoration, through a system of verified outcomes and science-based metrics, which builds a high-integrity system. So you can find more information on this webpage. So just to say that data are important for a wide variety of users, not only policymakers. And I would like to finish by thanking you and inviting you to the EU Green Week 2026, which will be a multi-site event, also with some online activities. And I'd like to show that we have a lot of interest in this area of investing in nature-positive economy. So with this, I would like to thank you and leave time for the panel.
Thank you very much, Ms. Tamborra. Please have a seat here. And we're going to complete our panel by welcoming to the stage a team leader for biodiversity and nature-based solutions at the Director of General Research and Innovation, Mr. Gilles Doignon. Thank you very much, and let's welcome him to the stage. Have a seat here. Gilles Doignon, thank you for coming. You just sat down. I'm going to go right to you because I think it's fair to get you into the conversation right away. Please feel free to comment on the 2 keynote speeches that you saw, if there was something that struck out. And then I'm going to ask you a basic question, which is, what is your vision of how to bridge the gap between research and policy with regards to biodiversity monitoring? Thank you for being with us.
Thank you very much. Do I have 1 hour?
Yeah, what we're going to do is we're going to try and do 2-3 minutes answer for each question, and then very quickly go to you guys. So in just a moment, you're going to have the opportunity to ask questions.
Well, first I would like to thank all the organizers for this wonderful rendezvous. There are many, many friends. Many thanks for the presentations. As we all understood, this is very complex, both in terms of the issue and then how to deal with it. And when you look at the slide that Marialuisa presented with all the different boxes, etc., yes, we know it's a mess. That was really my first task when I joined DG RTD, and I'm not still sure that I understand everything, but we are trying.
So what we don't know is this: biodiversity and ecosystems, are they more complex than the way we work on them? That's a good question, huh?
Yeah, both, yeah. From DG Research and Innovation side, I would say that, well, first we all work together, so hand in hand with DG Environment and many others. And actually, in this room, we are 11 colleagues from the European Commission. So we are from DG Research and Innovation, from DG Env, the Research Executive Agency, the European Environment Agency, and the Joint Research Center. So on our side, RTD, our role is that, well, first we have the money, so we pay the research projects, but really it's to ensure that we are there with the projects to reply to the urgent needs. So this is more what ENV will tell us. And then we are also there to prepare for the future. So for that, we are looking at 2030, but also 2040, 2050. We are here particularly to have new ideas. So what are the needs, the knowledge gaps? So we know where to put the money to have new projects so that we have results within 5 years, 10 years, etc. And we will learn a lot this week, well, we know. And I just want to mention two things. First, a quote from my late professor of zoology at university, Professor Rasmont, who used to say, it's impossible to know something you do not know. And actually, it's also impossible to protect or to restore something that you do not know or you measure. And also, it's very important to know what we have lost already. And this is also the link with all the museums and the collections. And then there was a quote at the Transformative Change Conference by Alternet last year in Portugal. I don't remember who said that, unfortunately, but it's most of us, we do not know what we need. And so there are so many huge developments in tools, in data, etc. It's also our role as scientists to connect the dots, to inform our colleagues, but then also, as you said, we have really to speak up and to speak about biodiversity to the private sector, etc. It's not only about protect and restore biodiversity, this is very important, but it's also the sustainable use element of the global biodiversity framework. So we will never succeed if we do not work together, and if we do not have on board the farmers, the fishermen, the urban planners, the mayors, and then the private sector. So the entire society. So it's really our role, and I'm really looking at the young people in the room. That will be your role when we will be retired. But really, all of us, we have to speak up. We have to explain biodiversity, particularly right now where everybody is saying, we do not need biodiversity.
Thank you, Gilles Doignon, and you give me a good opportunity to transition to the room. Whether you are young, less young, you can ask a question. You are most welcome. I see hands going up already. That is fantastic, because what we're going to do, however, because I already see 3 or 4 of them, and we only have about 10, 15 minutes, I'm going to put us into a little memory exercise. I'm going to help you. If we can just take 2 to 3 questions, if you can be quick, just 1 minute to ask your question. I know that you're probably going to want to give a little context, but use the times between the conferences and the workshop to do that. So we'll take 1, 2, 3 questions. I'm going to help you remember them. We have notes, and we'll be able to answer them as best as possible afterwards. Yes, thank you. Yes, feel free to stand up and introduce yourself briefly, of course.
Yeah, briefly, thanks a lot. I've worked during more than 25 years on biodiversity, science, policy interface, so perhaps I'm a little bit not so positive. I just want to remind that in 2002, the EU strategy was to stop the loss of biodiversity by 2010. So now we speak about restoration, and we speak about credits. We just forget that we have some dates. And my question is, do you think that it's really important to follow the loss of biodiversity, or that it will be more important to have a monitoring system to see the incoherence of the EU policies and supports?
What was just the last word, the equivalence? Is that what you said? Yes?
Sorry?
The last word, the equivalence, is that what you said? No, I think right before in the last sentence. It's okay, we'll figure it out.
Sorry.
We don't have the best sound on stage. It doesn't mean that we don't, but we heard, the panelists understood. Let's go to the next question. We're going to answer that one in a moment. I saw another hand up over here. I saw it this way. No? Yeah, all the way up there to the right. This allows us to be as efficient as possible and as participatory as possible. Thank you very much. Just giving you the time to go up there. Is there a third hand so that our volunteer with the next microphone can go? All right, good. We'll start with these 2.
Hi, my name is Andrea Miraldo. I'm a researcher, but also director of a company that is trying to engage the private sector in biodiversity monitoring. And what we have seen is that it takes a lot of time and sometimes, at the moment, years in order to convince the private sector to start monitoring their impacts on biodiversity. What can the EU do in order to encourage more participation from the private sector to speed up this process?
Okay, great. So we have one question where we were talking about timeframes, the fact that now we maybe procrastinated a little bit and now we're changing the strategy because our question related to the urgency of loss of biodiversity, and the next one about engaging the private sector. Who would like to respond? Good, and you have a microphone in the middle, and let's try so we can go for a second round of questions, let's try and keep the answers to maybe 2 to 3 minutes maximum. Thank you, Mrs. Tamborra.
Well, thank you for your, bit provocative question. I'd like to, you referred to the biodiversity strategy until 2010, and indeed, of course, the biodiversity, it was a realization that the biodiversity strategy had not reached its objectives. That is why there is yet a new strategy, which is much more ambitious. And also I would like to...
You just keep it closer to the microphone, closer to you. There.
Yes, yes, a more ambitious strategy that is also hinting, stressing the importance of the evidence-based policy. So we have created, as I said, a system for improving this interaction. We also have a number of, we have a consultative body that has been, a consultative group that has been created, the EU Biodiversity Platform, that is a consultative group that is made with member states, but also stakeholders, just to work with us and act as sounding board to see what can be implemented, how to implement it, to also check the capacities that are in member states, for example, and what NGOs can provide also in terms of additional data that are not in legislation, but that are collected somewhere else. I'd like also to mention that in the meantime also we had the GBIF, sorry, not GBIF, the Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, and this is also a main drive. So our reading is that the policies are in tune, are aligned with the objectives, also the international ones. We need to keep a stability also and to keep up momentum, especially in a moment where priorities are shifting towards, I mean, it's been said already, towards security and other problems, energy supply, etc. So we had to keep up the importance and so speak up, and it's also the job of everyone of us, everybody. Yeah, pass the floor.
Thank you, and Gilles Doignon, maybe you also want to talk about the private sector mobilization, and yeah, please.
Yeah, this is really a key question. So what's very important is what IBES is telling us. So IBES is now 12 years old, also the International Platform for Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services. So since the first global assessment in 2019, the messages are very clear. If we continue treating nature as we do, we are doomed. Our species will be doomed, and our business will be doomed. So the first thing is to have everybody on board understanding what it means and what they should do and how they can do. So at the Commission side, it's also our role from the GN, from the GRTD, Biodiversity team, etc., to explain the same to our colleagues from DG Grow, from DG Finance. This is not only about nice butterflies and monks and seals. This is really about our own future. So there are platforms existing, the Business and Biodiversity platform at DG Environment, but the good news is that we have more and more private companies coming to us because they are not stupid, they understood. You have now the Business and Biodiversity Assessment by IBES. Now we know what we should do, and we are there to advise the private companies how to do it together. There will be a very important workshop in Paris hosted by Banque de France on the 10th of June. So they are not NGOs. Huh? So we are talking about big money, and this is based on biodiversity. And we have also now on our side the European investment banks, the European central banks, more and more banks, insurance companies, private companies saying, yes, we need to invest into nature because we want to ensure our supplies. We want to avoid any financial risk. So, and this is also recognized by the World Economic Forum. So when you look at IBES, also on our side, I would say that I am one of the two EU focal points for IBES. Even internally at the European Commission, there are still many, many things to do, to explain. And for example, when I negotiated the assessment on invasive alien species, then I had to present that to my own hierarchy in DG Research. Director General, all the directors. And the first reaction was, oh, it's about invasive alien species, and everybody was laughing because you had the keyword alien. And I was like, okay, I forgot this could be seen as funny, but actually it's not funny at all. We are talking about more than 400 billion costs per year. And then they were listening. So it means that we have also to change our narrative as naturalists. It's not only about let's save the planet, etc. It's also about we have to take the business speech, and then they listen.
Thank you, Mr. Doignon. I want to ask a question to Professor Pettorelli before we go towards the wrap-up. Has your activity as a professor, researching and teaching, has it evolved explicitly over the past years in order to favor less work in silos and more interdisciplinary, even more holistic approach to biodiversity? And I would like a comment, on your job as a professor and a leader for a lot of students, and notably students that are in the room.
So I did my PhD in France on roe deer population dynamics. So it's been a journey. I started to work on climate change 20 years ago. And this is, rapidly I started to get interested in policy. Now, I don't know how it is now, but when I started, there was no education into policy, no information about what are the policy frameworks, no platforms for meeting policymakers, no awareness. So you had to learn everything by yourself. In the UK, though, we had a program run by the Royal Society where you could be paired up with a member of parliament. And really this triggered me into starting to work into policy. So went with Learn Society into policy specialist interest group, then started my journey into informing various policy processes just as a scientist, and then got into building a pathway. So I understood what was going on. I understood how to interact with people, and slowly but surely found my way into applying for places into committee, for example, in the Department for Food and Agriculture in the UK, or the Department for Net Zero, which both have a scientific and technical advisory committee. So the point is, yes, I very much changed how I work in terms of science to policy, where I do profound theoretical science on ecosystem science, but then half of my work is on writing policy pieces, thinking about how to build a science to policy pathway that really works, given our understanding of the natural world. The point that I was thinking about your question as to how do we make this forward, it is a whole pipeline of preparing the next generation so that they understand what's that policy, because it's not just about the GBIF or the CBD. You have international scale, you have national scale, you have local scale, and all of those matter on the policy spectrum. Then you have when you are a scientist, having funding so that you can do interdisciplinary, which integrate policy pathways. You have to have possibility to network with those policymakers. You need to have advertised those positions where scientists can get in. And then for us, it's also about going into those positions that we don't think we should be there, but actually we should really be there. All those departments that don't think that they need a biodiversity expert and actually really do. So it's about making your own space, but also understanding the game. And for the moment, we don't really have that pipeline that helps people getting on that journey. It would be good to build it.
Thank you very much, and I think we are going to use those very motivating words about creating this pipeline as a conclusion for this roundtable, because it was very clear what Mathieu Basille told us about timing. If I'm not exemplary in that way and I get you late for your next activity, I'm not going to be moderating next year's BioMonWeek. So thank you very much, Gilles Doignon, Marialuisa Tamborra, and Nathalie Pettorelli. Please excuse my accent if once in a while I try to show that I understood where your names come from. Great panel, very great discussion. Thank you very much for your participation. See you all for your workshops, for tomorrow's plenary. Have a great day amongst stakeholders, representatives, colleagues on biodiversity monitoring. Have a good day.